Good morning, everyone. This is Robert standing in for Mike. Welcome to your morning briefing for Friday, 26 September 2025. And we've got a lot to cover, so let's jump right into the domestic sit rep. Yesterday, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency released an emergency directive, and they're warning that Cisco-made firewall devices that are used by U.S. government agencies were breached by hackers. An acting deputy executive assistant director for CISA's cybersecurity division, Chris Butera, said that this threat is widespread, and he also urged any government and private networks that are not subject to this emergency directive to also look for potential breaches through these Cisco-made firewall devices. And earlier this week, the Office of Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche issued a directive to U.S. attorneys' offices in California, New York, Washington, D.C., Chicago, and other states and cities to investigate or to draft investigation plans targeting the Open Society Foundations. And this is the nonprofit that was founded by George Soros. And according to this directive, the DOJ is also suggesting that U.S. attorneys investigate Open Society Foundations for charges of arson, wire fraud, racketeering, and material support for terrorism. And then yesterday, news broke that Secretary of War Pete Hegseth ordered top military officials to report for a meeting early next week at Marine Corps Base Quantico in Virginia. According to an industrial official who spoke on background, Hegseth called the meeting to discuss the upcoming national defense strategy. And just as a reminder, this new national defense strategy that is supposed to be published soon is actually a major pivot for the United States national strategy, the United States grand strategy, where it is a pullback from a focus on Europe and Asia and into the Western Hemisphere. And legal experts said the Department of Labor's new Project Firewall initiative, which is targeting H-1B visa violations, is a major posture change for federal labor agencies. And under this Project Firewall, the companies that use H-1B visas to attract foreign workers are going to be targeted with new compliance investigations, and companies that violate these H-1B regulations could be banned from the visa program, according to the Department of Labor. Moving over to the domestic side, the Department of Justice sued 6 states, and this is California, Michigan, Minnesota, New York, New Hampshire, and Pennsylvania, for refusing to hand over unredacted voter registration lists. And the DOJ said that these states refusing to hand over these voter registration rolls are violating federal voting laws. And they also asked the federal district courts in each of these states to invalidate any state laws that they say could block state officials from releasing these records. And then finally, in the domestic sit rep, the Utah State Legislature, their redistricting committee, presented 5 proposed mid-decade congressional maps during a committee meeting on Wednesday. And the redistricting committee is scheduled to make a final recommendation by the 6th of October. And this is after a 10-day public comment period. And in this case, in Utah, this is actually the result of a lawsuit brought by some Democrat-aligned groups. And this could result in at least 1 seat for Democrats. And Jared, if you could come on and take us through the global sit rep, please.
Absolutely. So we got some interesting news out of Ukraine yesterday. Zelensky sat down for an interview with Axios and told them actually that he intends to leave office, or at least hold elections, if a ceasefire is achieved. Now, specifically says that he's going to inform his parliament to organize the elections to happen. There have been no elections that were supposed to happen during the war. Now, this is important because this is actually one of Russia's main hangups for even agreeing to a ceasefire. Is they question the legitimacy of Zelensky. This is kind of a middle ground that would allow them to basically say, okay, cool, we can figure out who's going to be next, even if he's going to oversee the ceasefire. And keep in mind, the ceasefire is not the peace. The peace would follow on from that. So the new leader would presumably transition during that time. Moving much closer to home, the U.S. and Turkey signed a memorandum of understanding on strategic civil nuclear cooperation yesterday, and this is to advance their partnership in nuclear energy. Now, the details of the MOU actually remain unpublished, but Turkish officials familiar with the matter, they said that both countries were already holding talks on constructing new large nuclear power plants and small modular nuclear reactors. I think this is all just based off of what we've seen from the Trump administration so far. I think what's happening here is we're likely to see Turkish investment along with American technology. That just seems to be how how things are playing out. And what that does is allow quicker development of these small modular reactor programs. This is also likely to help secure American influence over Turkey, which is an enormous player in the region just due to their location. And kind of staying in this region, when Trump was asked about his diplomacy with Arab leaders earlier this week, he told the press that he was not going to allow Israel to annex the West Bank. I frankly don't think that Israel is going to listen to this. But just like the heads of state meeting that we covered earlier this week, the fact that Israel will not listen, yet Trump is personally involved, I think, plays into how Israeli-American relationships are going to be in the rest of the administration, which could also warp how the Arab nations and Turkey respond to Israeli aggression in the region. And lastly, Colombia and Venezuela signed another memorandum of understanding this morning to establish a second binational zone in their southern border states. You can see it here on the map. Just like with the first zone, this is establishing a cross-border collaboration a framework for cross-border collaboration, and it's aimed at economic opportunities, social programs, all the above. But I do want to note that the last time that they announced this, which was just 3 months ago, it was almost immediately followed by troop deployments in the tens of thousands, specifically on counter-narcotics missions. I think that's going to happen here again.
All right. Thank you for that, Jared. Let's move on to our protests for this weekend. We have 443 protests scheduled for today, Saturday, and Sunday. And that will do it for the SITREP portion of our brief. When we move over to the high side, we're going to cover the Homeland Operations SITREP in this new National Security Presidential Memorandum that was issued last night. We're also going to cover the federal grand jury indictment of former FBI Director James Comey, and then Jared is going to cover an international meeting over maritime security. So if you'd like to join us on the high side, you can go to forwardobserver.com and get a 7-day free trial. And Jared, if you could take us to the high side, please.